Hey guys, Frank here. Welcome in our studio in Emmeloord. Now, in the previous episode, you saw me retouching Lara Croft in, of course, a Photoshop AI and a Boris FX. Now, the combination of Boris FX and Photoshop is, in my opinion, a killer one. Now, you hear a lot of people talking about artificial intelligence, that it will ruin photography. You just type in some text and there it is. There's no fun in it, right? Yeah, I totally agree. It's like telling a computer to make a song that sounds like Queen and then claiming it's your own. I don't agree with that at all. Where it goes a little bit in a different direction is actually, I think, the way that we use artificial intelligence. And it's not because I'm better than you. Everybody has to do their art in their own way. But I try to get the images as close as possible on set. And then later on in Photoshop AI, I will add certain elements that were actually almost impossible to place in the set. Like, for example, in the previous video, we did a Lara Croft. Now, I can't get 10 snakes in the studio, but I can create them in Photoshop and make the image much more believable. But if I just shoot it with a flat softbox, it doesn't look right. So we always have to make sure that the lighting is correct. So let's open up the image and let's see what we can do with this image. Okay guys, we are in Photoshop. Let's create a little bit of a horror scene. Now this was shot during a demo and I didn't really plan on changing this image with artificial intelligence and Boris FX. I just shot it, but the way that she screams, the red light, the little bit of subdued lighting, I really get a big horror vampire look. So let's try to create something like that. Now, because I shot this with a normal backdrop and I didn't think about using artificial intelligence later, I have to replace the backdrop. Now, normally when I shoot stuff like this, think about the Lara Croft video we did before, I choose the backdrop, I choose the lighting, I choose the gels, and then I extend that backdrop and create something that's, in my opinion, very believable. In this case, I have to make the model loose from the backdrop because, well, I don't like the backdrop in the back, I like something else. So let's do a select subject. And in this case, because we have a lot of floating hairs, it will not do the selection very well. I'm not going to refine it. I want to keep the video as short as possible. So I'm going to cut some corners. So normally, of course, we are way more neat in our retouching. But for now, we're going to do it like this. Now, those floating hairs, I don't feel like doing that now. We can always add those later. If we're going to change the whole image, why not add some hairs later, right? So let's make a rough selection. Again, you can do it much nicer if you take some time, but for now, this is good enough for the video. Okay, nice. Go back. Now do an edit and then copy our model. And let's copy our model on a new layer. And this is all the stuff that you don't have to do if you choose your backdrop wisely. So do edit, paste into place. There we go. Okay, so I'm getting a huge horror vibe from this. So let's select our whole backdrop. And normally I highly recommend against doing this because this is a 60 megapixel file and Photoshop is best if you do smaller segments. The resolution is much better. But for this, it's the backdrop. Let's just try it. Let's do generative fill and do a dark vampire castle in the distance with a long road leading towards it with gravestones. Very dark and creepy with some bats flying around. Don't know what's gonna happen, but hey, we'll see. That's part of the surprise, right? Okay, nice. Not really what I wanted. This is really nice. And this is too fake. So I think we can work with this one. Let's place our model on top and let's see how it looks. That looks pretty horrendous. But I think we can work with it if we change the blending mode here to, for example, darken. There we go. Look at this. Makes it a little bit more abstract. And I think for this image, I actually like it. So that backdrop did actually work pretty well. If you want to go abstract, and let's do that for now. Okay, so those floating hairs, right? So let's create some floating hairs. Cool. Just keep it on red hair. Sometimes it needs a little bit longer sentences. Sometimes you can get away with a very short one. It always surprises me how close it can get sometimes, and sometimes how far away it can get from what you want. But I think that's the part of the fun of getting something that is in progress, right? This is the first official release, and I think for the first official release, it already looks absolutely stunning. There we go. I like this. Okay, so let's do for now, because I'm recording, I'm gonna flatten my image. Okay, let's make those fangs. Let's go to 200%, and as you can see here, she doesn't wear any fangs for the very simple reason we didn't know she was gonna be a vampire. So let's go for filter, and let's go for liquefy, and I can tell you something. After I tried this, I will never ever use fangs again like prosthesis. Maybe it will look better, but here you have so much more options. So with liquefy, just zoom in like crazy, so go for this. And now what you're going to do is you're going to use the top one. And we're going to call that the forward warp tool. It's a little bit small at the moment, and that's nice because now I can literally, and it sounds a little bit weird, pull the teeth out, as you can see here. Let's make that really nice and pointy. Well, let's do the same thing for this one. And of course, the smaller ones here. And as you can see here, this brush is actually a little bit too big, so let's make it smaller. Let's create some really nasty fangs. Extend them just a little bit more. Make the brush bigger again. And maybe extend this one too. Okay, good enough for now. Okay, press OK. There we go. Okay, now let's see what we can do more. I actually think that we're done in Photoshop at the moment. I think now it's time to glue everything together and go into my favorite plugin for that, and that's the new Boris FX. Now, Boris FX just released a new update, and I've been playing with it for about a week now, and it's absolutely stunning. They already overwhelm you with a lot of options, and well, they added even more. In this case, let's first add a little bit of lens flare. Now, I have a little bit of trouble with the moon here. I would like it a little bit more here. And when you remember the original shot, we actually had some lens flare over here. But because we changed the backdrop, all that lens flare is gone. So I'm going to try to create something from this corner of the moon, just to give it a little bit of an edge. So let's create a lens flare. And let's make that a little bit smaller. There we go. Now, of course, the color is totally wrong, so let's go for red. There we go. As you can see here, this doesn't look right? It's a little bit too much. So let's change the lens flare for something that's a little bit less obvious. Maybe just drag it outside anyway. Maybe I can get away by creating something that's a little bit bigger, like here. Maybe we're going to take the moon out in the picture when we go back into Photoshop. I think that's the best solution for this. Because the moon actually takes you out of the believable area. Like, you see the moon here and then you see the light here. I think if we take the moon out later in Photoshop, this looks a little bit more believable. There we go. I really like the effect. Nice. Okay, add another layer. And what we're now going to do is we're going to go for Film Lab. And I'm going to choose film stocks, and I really want a little bit more of a bluish tint, like you can see here, because let's be honest, when we watch horror movies and it's at night, there's always this blue tint, and that's because, of course, at night everything is blue, which in reality it isn't, but somehow that's ingrained in our mind because Hollywood makes us believe that. So that's why we're going to tint the image a little bit bluish. Okay, so now that we already did some work, one of the things that I absolutely love to do is actually tint my images. For me, color is emotion. Color evokes emotion. And when you shoot on film, you actually choose the film, for example, Riella or Portra or Velvia, for the certain look they have. Now, when I look at a raw image, it's always flat, so you need to add a little bit of contrast, maybe add some highlights or shadows. But now we're going to take it one step further. Now, maybe I'm going to add some grain, maybe I'm going to add some other stuff. But the part we're going to do now is, for me, one of the most vital parts. This is where the image really comes alive. Everything before this is just piecing the puzzle together. What we're now going to do is we're going to paint the puzzle, and now we're going to really create that mood that we want. So let's dive back into Boris and let's go to the film part. Ooh, I love that. Ooh, this is too much, but I do like the effect. I'm going to aim for something like that. There we go. This looks really nice for me. Yeah, I also like the original one, so let's make a blend of those two. Okay, nice. Now, one of the things that Boris FX added is a lot of extra options to play around with. And I'm not going to show you all because that's insane. There's way too much here. But I'm going to show you one that I really like, and that's actually the orbs. And when you go over here, you find the orbs in the light section. And this is the familiar orbs. Now, I'm not going to use those. You can use these ones. Those are a little bit more out of focus. And of course, you can change wherever you want those orbs to go. But I think we're going to go for something a little bit more adventurous. Oh, I really like this one. The inverted inward draft vignette. Oh my, what's in the name? Okay, I don't like the effect here. That's too much. I think it's a little bit of a prism effect. So here you can see that there is in the prism. You can turn that off and on. I do like the effect, but I don't like it that strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the weight, I think. There we go. A little bit down. And maybe also the effect, just tone it down just a little bit. But I still want that nice, a little bit surreal effect. So very subtle. There we go, just enough. Okay. Now another thing, of course, with horror movies, we need a little bit of smoke. So let's go for our particle illusion. And again, normally I would do this on set with real smoke. But let's be honest, if you can do it like this, now I can manipulate the smoke to do whatever I want. And that's also a big advantage, of course. So let's start with this one and just place that in the corner because we want to keep the smoke low. Now, with Boris FX, you can change whatever you want, also with the smoke. Just look at this. You can change, of course, your world transform and, for example, make the smoke larger or smaller. But you can also go to the... Oh, wait a minute, it's stuck. There we go. You can also go to the particle properties and you can change whatever you like. You can change the life and it almost looks like a movie. And you just press stop where you think like, oh, that looks nice. And you can change the number. I like it more subtle. I think this looks really nice. Change the velocity. And again, it's just like a movie. Just press stop where you like it. The weight. Spin, motion, well, you get the idea, right? Okay, let's add another layer with smoke. Now if you think like, hey, do I have to type this in every time? No. But I want to show you both ways. So we go for smoke. Let's add some more, a little bit of puff of smoke. Let's move that over here. There we go. Now if you don't want to go find smoke, go to particles, you can also do this, of course. Go for a duplicate layer. And now you have a double smoke. So now what you have to do is just place one of those smoke areas away from the original one. And then you can manipulate that one. And then you still have two different kinds of smoke. It's just the same filter. Or the same starting point, actually. Let's go for the particle illusion again. I like it subtle around our model. So let's do another one. Duplicate layer. Now, I do like a little bit more light on the eyes. Now, of course, you can open that up in Photoshop, but this software has a really nice way of doing it. So go for light, and now go for eye light. You can also use, of course, other options, but I really like the eye light. As you can see here, you can change the center of the eye light. Just place it here. But you can also use these corners to really fine-tune where it is. And of course you can use masking, but when I'm screen recording you can see everything is a little bit sluggish. I don't recognize this from Boris, so it's really the screen recording that slows it down, because normally it goes really nice and smooth. Now if I turn it on and off, you don't see a lot of difference. As you can see here, actually almost nothing. But as soon as I start adding that brightness, you probably see why I like this more than do it into Photoshop. It gives you a little bit of a glow around the edges. It's subtle, but I really like that effect, especially when you do stuff like this, where it's a little bit more filmic. I don't want it too much, just tone it down. And always turn it on and off to check. Yeah, I really like this. Okay, press apply. And now let's finish the image in Photoshop. Okay, The first thing I want to do is I want to create a little bit more oomph in the shot. So I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to go for channels. Make sure you're on the backdrop. Go for channels. Go for the red channel. Command A, Command C. You can also choose the blue channel if you want. Then copy that layer up here. So Command V. Now it looks like I have a black and white copy, but it's not. It's the red channel. And this is where we can use some really cool blending techniques in Photoshop. As you can see here, I'm always going through the different options. And if you want something really abstract, it's there. I like it more subtle. So I'm going to find something. The pin light is really nice in this case. Takes away a little bit of the red, but it also gives it some nice looks. I think I'm going to blend this one. Really nice. Okay, the only thing I think is the smoke on the bottom is a little bit too much. A little bit too bright. So let's go for image. Let's go for a layer new. And let's do a layer with soft light and a neutral, or sorry, soft light neutral gray. Very nice. And what I'm now going to do is I'm going to actually make my image a little bit smaller and create a vignette around my model. And especially focusing on the smoke. So in other words, the top part and everything can stay nice and bright. The lens flare, of course, too. Let's do this. There we go. Let's feather that selection. Select modify and feather. Just feather the heck out of it, like 1000 pixels. There we go. Invert that selection, that's very important, otherwise it doesn't work. And now take your paint bucket and use a black paint and just fill that in. There you go. Now let's look at the difference. Let's go for full screen again, fit on screen. Yeah, that really did it for me. Now it really jumps out. I can still see the smoke. And as I always do with these kinds of things, I start at 0 and then build up to hero. There we go. Now, of course, it's not a perfect image. It's not photorealistic, but for a video, again, I try to cut some corners that you guys can see it in a relatively short time. It's more about the creativity, the combination of Photoshop and Boris FX, and that, especially with Photoshop AI at the moment, there's absolutely no limits anymore to what you can create. And I think Adobe is going somewhere where it's really interesting for us creators to literally create our own scenes. Shoot it as much as possible on the set, so pick your backdrops, pick your lighting, make sure the styling is okay, the model's pose, and then you can add some stuff with Adobe and of course Boris FX to glue everything together. But as you can see in this image, it's still very important to make sure that you pick the right backdrop, because that's the part where in this image I don't really feel that everything fits together. But I still wanted to see how it works out, and I think the end result is pretty nice overall. Okay, let's go back to the studio for our final conclusion. Now, as you can see, the combination of Photoshop AI to literally just add some elements and then Boris FX to glue everything together, create lighting effects, use the film mode. I just think that combination is a killer combination. So whenever you feel creative and you know you can do most on set, or maybe you don't want to do it on set and select subject and create everything else, make sure you check out Boris FX. They just have a new version out, and that's actually the one that I'm using in the videos. And they added a lot of extra stuff. So without any doubt, check out Boris FX. And of course, if you don't use Photoshop yet, well, why not? Photoshop, come on. Hey guys, if you like what we do, subscribe to our channel, leave comments below, and of course smash that like button. But most of all, tell other people about our channel so we can grow. See you again next time, if I'm not replaced by artificial intelligence by then, but I don't think so. Bye.